What if I told you that the world has already been reset, but something went wrong in the process? It might seem strange at first, but think about it for a second. Have you ever had the feeling that a moment repeated itself exactly the same way, as if time had stopped for an instant, or gone back a few seconds without you realizing it? That unsettling feeling of déjà vu, only more intense, more real, almost like a glitch in reality. Have you ever experienced that? Now imagine that this isn't just a feeling. What if these small mistakes are signs of something bigger, something that nobody noticed? Or worse, something that was deliberately forgotten? What you're about to discover might surprise you. There's a theory circulating in the darkest corners of the internet and the human mind, the idea that reality, as we know it, has already been reset, a complete restart, a zero point. But unlike what should have happened, this reset didn't end. Something interrupted the process, and since then, the world continues to function. Only with flaws, subtle flaws, almost imperceptibly. A clock that seems to repeat the same time. A phrase someone says, exactly the same, in the same tone, as if it were an echo trapped in time. People you swear you've seen before, in situations that never happened. Small paradoxes, scattered like invisible cracks on the surface of reality. And the strangest thing of all, most people simply ignore it. Perhaps it's easier to believe it's just a coincidence, or tiredness, or imagination. But what if it isn't? What if these glitches are remnants of a broken system, a type of error that shouldn't exist, but keeps happening because no one has been able to fix it? Stay with me until the end, because things are starting to get even weirder. Some accounts describe moments when time seems to literally break. Not dramatically, but subtly enough to go unnoticed. Except by those paying close attention. An object that changes place without explanation. A sound that repeats itself like a loop. A memory that doesn't fit with what actually happened. It's as if we're living inside an incomplete version of reality. A kind of strange alternate world where the rules are still being adjusted, or perhaps, patched up. And if that's true, it means that what we call the present may not be entirely stable. It may just be a series of fixes trying to keep everything running. Like a system trying to avoid collapse, while slowly failing. Now think about this. What if you've already noticed one of these glitches, but forgot about it soon after? What if your mind is somehow protecting you from these flaws? Because if the reset didn't actually finish, then that raises an even more unsettling question. What exactly should have happened when everything was reset? And why was it never completed? Perhaps the answer lies hidden in the details you normally ignore. In those moments when something seems out of place. That fleeting feeling that reality isn't quite right, but which disappears before you can understand it. And that's precisely where things start to get dangerous. Joy. Because when you start noticing these details, there's no way to unsee them anymore. It's as if something inside you awakens. A silent, almost instinctive feeling that there's more going on behind the scenes than there should be. And the more you observe, the more these flaws begin to appear, as if they were waiting to be noticed. Now tell me, have you ever felt this? Have you ever had that strange, inexplicable moment when everything seems slightly out of place, as if the world had frozen for a second? If this has ever happened to you, leave a comment below. Seriously, I want to know what you saw, what you felt, because the more people share these experiences, the more we begin to understand that perhaps this isn't an isolated event. And if this topic makes sense to you, if any part of it left you with that strange feeling of this is familiar, then click like. It may seem like something simple, but this helps this type of content reach more people who are also starting to notice these flaws in reality. And if you want to continue exploring these mysteries, these paradoxes, these possible breaks in time, subscribe to the channel, because the idea here isn't just to watch, it's to connect the dots, together. Your participation here is what makes this channel grow and reach more people with this type of content. People who may also be seeing things they can't explain. Because in the end, maybe you're not alone in this, and perhaps these failures are not happening because of chance. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because when we talk about a reset, it's not just a simple idea of starting over, like restarting any system. This involves something much bigger, almost a complete transformation of reality, an attempt to erase everything and rebuild from scratch. Except that, for some reason, this process wasn't completed, and what's left is an unstable version, full of small flaws that slip through the cracks behind what we call normal. Think about it. Every system needs time to restart, adjust, and reorganize information. Now imagine a system as complex as reality itself being interrupted in the middle of this process. The result wouldn't be an immediate collapse, but something much more subtle and dangerous, an imperfect continuity. A world that seems to function, but carries hidden inconsistencies in every detail. And that's where a hidden truth that few people consider comes in. Perhaps these glitches, these paradoxes, and these breaks in time are not random errors, but signs of an unfinished process, as if reality were still trying to correct itself, recalculate decisions, align events, and failing to keep everything coherent. This completely changes how we perceive the present, Because if the reset hasn't finished, then every choice, every moment, every memory could be affected by this incomplete state, as if we were living within a provisional version of existence, where not everything is fully defined. And perhaps the most unsettling thing is this: most people go on, as usual, noticing nothing, but some begin to notice patterns, repetitions, small distortions, as if they were seeing beyond the surface, embarking on a kind of silent journey in search of answers. And if you've made it this far, perhaps it has already begun within you as well. Comment below. Does this make sense for me? Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because the first signs that something is wrong don't appear in an obvious way. They are subtle, almost invisible, like small cracks in a structure that still seems firm on the outside. This is the point that many people ignore, but it is precisely here that everything begins. Perhaps you've looked at the clock, seen a specific time, looked away for a few seconds, and when you looked back, time seemed to have stood still. Or even worse, it seemed to have gone back. At that moment, your mind tries to find a logical, rational explanation, based on your mindset and the automatic decisions you make every day. But, deep down, there's that strange feeling that something didn't quite fit, and it doesn't stop there. There are moments when you hear someone say the exact same phrase, in the same tone, in the same context, as if that scene were repeating itself. Not as a memory, but as reality happening again, right before your eyes. This creates a silent, almost imperceptible, but profoundly unsettling impact. These small flaws are like behind-the-scenes glimpses being revealed for a second, as if reality had blinked, and you had seen something that shouldn't have been there. And the most curious thing is that, soon after, everything returns to normal. As if nothing had happened. As if it were just another detail lost in the middle of the routine. But what if it isn't? What if these are precisely the first signs that the reset isn't complete? Small errors slipping through while the system tries to remain stable. Fragments of a hidden truth beginning to emerge, but never long enough to be fully understood. And perhaps the most important thing here isn't the event itself, but how you react to it, because some people simply ignore it and move on. Others begin to observe. They begin to question. They enter, even without realizing it, into a journey of revelations that completely changes the way they see the world. And it is at this point that everything begins to take on a new meaning. Comment below. I'm on this journey too. Hide. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject. Because when these signs cease to be isolated incidents, everything changes. They are no longer just strange moments or coincidences that are easy to ignore. A pattern begins to emerge. And patterns, when they appear in something that should be completely random, reveal much more than they seem. Perhaps you'll start to notice that certain situations repeat themselves, but never exactly the same. A conversation happens again, only with slight differences. A decision you made before seems to reappear, as if it were being reevaluated. It's as if reality is testing paths, adjusting possibilities. Almost like a system trying to find the correct version of events. This creates a kind of silent impact on your perception, because, little by little, your mindset changes. You start paying attention to the details, to the behind-the-scenes aspects of things, to the small variations that previously went unnoticed. And the more you observe, the more these impossible patterns begin to appear. And here comes one of the most intriguing parts of this journey. These loops don't seem random. They follow a strange logic, almost as if they were trying to correct something that got out of control. As if each repetition were an attempt to align decisions, adjust consequences, recalibrate reality itself. But if that's true, then it means that something, at some point, went significantly wrong, and perhaps these patterns are merely echoes of that mistake. Fragments of a hidden truth that is still being processed, rearranged, but never fully resolved. As if we were trapped in a sequence of slightly different versions of the same world, without realizing that we are moving in circles. And what's most unsettling is that the more you recognize these patterns, the harder it becomes to ignore them. They begin to make sense within a larger logic, like pieces of a puzzle that hasn't yet been fully revealed. And it is precisely at this point that things cease to be merely strange, and begin to become impossible to explain in a conventional way. Comment below. I'm noticing the patterns. Ions. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because when these patterns begin to repeat themselves with slight variations, we enter an even more complex territory, that of paradoxes. And here, things cease to follow any common logic. It's no longer just about something repeating itself. It's about something happening without a clear origin, or worse, with multiple origins at the same time. Think about it. What if a decision you believe you've made now was actually influenced by something that hasn't even happened yet? It sounds confusing, but that's exactly the kind of distortion a broken timeline can cause. Cause and effect cease to be a straight line and begin to blend together, as if reality were folding back on itself. This has a profound impact on how we understand existence itself. Because, if paradoxes are real within this context, then there is no longer a fixed sequence of events. There is an unstable flow, where past, present, and future coexist imperfectly, constantly being adjusted behind the scenes. And perhaps that's the real transformation that few people realize. It's not the world that's simply wrong. It's the logic that underpins everything that has changed. A linear mindset can no longer explain what's happening. It's necessary to see beyond, to connect points that, at first glance, don't make sense. And here emerges one of the most unsettling revelations of this entire journey. Some events may not have a defined beginning. They simply exist, as if they were inserted into reality already formed, without history, without cause, merely as part of a system trying to stabilize itself. This would explain that strange feeling of experiencing something that seems important, but you don't know where it came from, as if it were a memory without a past, an experience without an origin. And if the reset really failed, then these paradoxes could be much more than glitches. They could be attempts at correction that got out of control. And it is precisely at this point that reality begins to lose any secure reference point. Comment below. This is getting weird. Demay, now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because there comes a point when all of this stops being just theory and becomes personal. It's like crossing an invisible line. Before, you only observed the patterns, the paradoxes, the flaws. But now, you begin to see yourself within them. And that's where the turning point happens. Perhaps you're in a common situation, something from everyday life, and suddenly, a strange feeling arises, almost impossible to ignore. It's not just déjà vu. It's different, it's deeper. It's as if you know exactly what's going to happen in the next few seconds, and then it happens. Exactly the same, without variation. At that moment, something changes in your mindset, because you can no longer treat this as a coincidence. There is a real impact, an internal shift, as if your perception has accessed a deeper layer of reality, the behind-the-scenes aspects that are normally hidden. And then comes the question that changes everything. If you've experienced this moment before, when was the first time? This is the most unsettling part, because, when you try to remember, you realize there's no clear origin. The memory is there, but it doesn't have a defined beginning. It's as if it was inserted into you, a memory without a past, an experience that simply appeared. And this opens the door to an even more uncomfortable revelation. What if you're not just experiencing these events, but repeating them? It's as if you're trapped in a cycle you haven't realized until now, a silent loop where your decisions seem free. But, deep down, they've happened before, and perhaps they're being adjusted, refined, modified with each repetition. This isn't just about reality being unstable. It's about you being part of that instability. And the more you notice it, the harder it becomes to ignore. Because the feeling doesn't disappear. It grows, it intensifies, like a sign that you're getting closer to something that shouldn't be fully understood. And it is precisely at this point that the experience ceases to be observation and becomes direct involvement. Comment below. I've already felt easy. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject. Because after that point, the sensation ceases to be merely internal and begins to reflect in the environment around you. It's as if reality itself begins to respond to your perception. Small details that were once stable now seem unstable, inconsistent, almost as if they are in a constant process of transformation. You look around and everything is still normal, but not entirely. There's a subtle lag in things, a slight disharmony. An object seems to be in one place, but when you really pay attention, it's no longer exactly there. Sounds seem to echo for longer than natural. Movements become strangely mechanical for a moment, as if something had frozen and then returned to the flow. This has a direct impact on how you interpret the world, because it's no longer just a feeling. It's something visible, even if only for fractions of a second. As if the backstage of reality were leaking to the surface, revealing that what seems solid and reliable may be much more fragile than you imagined. And what's most unsettling is that these glitches don't seem random. They happen at specific times, almost as responses to decisions, thoughts, or changes in your own mindset, as if there were a direct connection between you and this unstable system. This raises an even deeper possibility. What if reality isn't just breaking down, but reacting? It's as if it's trying to adjust to its presence, recalibrate its journey, correct something that got out of control. But, in this process, it ends up exposing its own limitations. Like an overloaded system, trying to maintain coherence while gradually losing stability. And the more you notice these breaks, the more they seem to intensify. They don't disappear, they don't hide completely. They evolve, as if they were keeping pace with your level of awareness about all of this. And it is at this point that one of the most disconcerting revelations of all emerges. Comment below. Reality doesn't seem normal. Just now, I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because when we put all these signs together, the patterns, the paradoxes, the subtle and then visible breaks, a theory begins to emerge that completely changes how we see all of this. Not as isolated events, but as parts of a single process, a reboot that was initiated and never completed. Think of it as a system undergoing an update. During this process, everything enters an intermediate state where nothing is completely stable. Now imagine this applied to reality itself. What we are experiencing may not be the final version, but rather a kind of prolonged transition, where adjustments are constantly being made behind the scenes. This would explain why everything seems functional, but never entirely solid. As if every decision you make is being recalculated in real time. As if there were an invisible force trying to align possibilities, correct deviations, maintain a minimum of coherence while something much bigger has yet to unfold. And here comes a hidden truth that changes everything. Perhaps time, as we understand it, is no longer flowing linearly. It may be being reprocessed, reorganized, as if events were being reviewed, repositioned, sometimes even repeated, until they fit within an acceptable pattern. This completely transforms your journey within this reality, because it stops being just about living and becomes about participating in an ongoing process. A process that involves choices, impacts, and adjustments that you don't always consciously perceive. And perhaps that's why certain things seem almost certain, but never completely defined. As if the world were always one step away from stabilizing, but never quite got there. If this theory is correct, then we're not just living after a reset. We are living inside it. Comment below. I feel like this is real. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject. Because if all of this is true, then the most unsettling part isn't what has already happened, but what could still happen. The feeling of instability ceases to be mere curiosity and takes on a different weight, almost like a silent warning, as if reality were trying to remain intact, but we're nearing its limit. And that's where a discomfort that's hard to ignore arises. Because, if we're in the midst of an unfinished reboot, then anything can change at any moment. Not dramatically, but subtly enough to go unnoticed. While completely altering the course of things, small decisions can have disproportionate impacts. Memories can be adjusted without you realizing it. Paths can be rewritten behind the scenes. This profoundly affects your mindset, because it removes that feeling of absolute control, and in its place, it creates constant doubt. To what extent is what you experience truly fixed? Perhaps the greatest hidden truth here is this. Stability may be just a well-constructed illusion, a side effect of a system trying to appear complete, even while it's in process. And the more you realize this, the harder it becomes to go back to the old way of seeing everything. And there's a detail that almost no one considers. What if the very act of noticing these flaws is part of the problem? As if by seeing too much, you begin to interfere even more in this process. As if your consciousness ceases to be merely a spectator, and begins to have a direct impact on this unfinished reconstruction. This makes the journey much more personal than it seems, because it's not just about the world out there. It's about what happens inside you while all of this unfolds. And perhaps that's precisely why some answers never appear clearly. Comment below. This stirred something with. Enough now, I want to delve even deeper into this subject. Because, in the end, all of this starts to touch on something much closer than it seems. It's not just about glitches, paradoxes, or a possible error in reality. It's about how you perceive your own life. Those small pauses in time, the intense déjà vus, the decisions that seem too familiar, perhaps they aren't just coincidences, but fragments of something bigger happening behind the scenes. And this completely changes your relationship with the present, because each choice takes on a different weight. Every strange feeling stops being ignored and starts being observed. It's almost like a silent transformation in your mindset, where you stop living on autopilot and start questioning what previously seemed obvious. Perhaps that's the real turning point. It's not about proving that reality is broken, but realizing that there's something beyond the surface. A deeper layer, full of revelations that aren't directly shown, but can be felt in the details. In moments when everything seems normal, until you really pay attention, and if this reset is still in progress, then it means the story isn't finished. That what you're experiencing today might just be a work in progress, subject to adjustments, corrections, and changes that happen without warning. As if each day were part of a larger, still incomplete process. Now think about it. How many times have you ignored that feeling that something wasn't right? How many times have you chosen to move forward without questioning? Maybe it's not by chance. Maybe it's part of how all of this was structured. And maybe, just maybe, you've already realized more than you should have. Comment below. I started the questioner, and if you've made it this far, it probably wasn't by chance. Perhaps some part of this conversation resonated with you in a different way. As if it weren't just a video, but a kind of recognition. And that's exactly what makes it all worthwhile. Because when you allow yourself to see beyond the obvious, you begin to notice things that most people simply miss. If this journey resonated with you, consider subscribing to the channel, not as an automatic click, but as a conscious choice to continue exploring this type of content, these ideas, these possible truths hidden in the details. And if at any point you felt that strange discomfort, that feeling of this isn't just a coincidence, leave a like. It shows that this connection happened, that this exchange was real in some way. Oh, and comment below. I'm with you until the end, just so I know who really made it through this experience this far. Now there's a video over here that complements all of this in an even more profound way. If you want to continue this journey, just click and follow along with me there.